Now, they were supposed to be in space for 8 days and now could be there for 8 months. That was the update given by NASA today on 2 US astronauts currently stranded on the International Space Station. Sunita Williams and Barry Butch Wilmore launched into space in early June, but the Boeing Starliner rocket that took them to space has faced technical issues that has prevented it returning to Earth. NASA have now said the pair could be in orbit aboard the ISS until February, but insisted the crew is not in danger. Let's speak to Dr. Leroy Chiao, a retired astronaut and former commander of the International Space Station. And you spent quite a few days, a couple of more than 200, I think, days in space, so you will know how they will be feeling. But still, psychologically, when you think you're going for 8 days and it may be a lot longer, they've got families. How will they be dealing with this?
Well, sure. Nobody likes uncertainty. In fact, that's the one thing humans, no matter what it is, dislike most, is uncertainty. And so it's a matter of, well, we thought we were going to be there for 8 to 10 days, and now we've been there for a couple of months, and we may be there for up to 8 months, as you pointed out. So obviously disruptive of your life, your plans. But on the other hand, Butch and Sunny are consummate professionals. They're astronauts. Astronauts enjoy being in space. They're being productive. Certainly the NASA planners and schedulers are taking advantage of the extra hands up there, and they are in no danger. So it's not an entirely bad deal, even though they hadn't planned to be up there for, possibly up to 8 months.
You mentioned the word danger. I mean, obviously, for people like me that don't know about these things, hearing that there was an issue with the ship, which is why they couldn't immediately leave, I'd be worried about how to get back to Earth. But presumably they can rationalise all of this and sort of concern won't be top of their list of problems.
Well, sure. I mean, and danger and risk are, a matter of degree, right? And so, frankly, the Starliner, there's enough confidence in the Starliner that should there arise an emergency aboard ISS where they needed to evacuate, it would be a lower risk to get into the vehicle and to go ahead and come home in it. So, but all things being equal, with the space station being in good shape, NASA and Boeing engineers are going over everything, conducting tests as they have been doing for the last 2 months, trying to determine exactly what is the root cause that caused 5 of these thrusters to fail during the approach and docking to the ISS. And until they can get to that root cause, it's difficult to justify, in the absence of another emergency, putting these 2 astronauts back on that vehicle to come home, which is why NASA's considering the option to bring them back on a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft.
Well, it's a fascinating story on so many levels. Let's bring in our panel, Kurt Badela and Leon Amirali. Leon, perhaps if you'd gone on a work trip for 8 days and it ended up being for 8 months, what would be the top of your problem list?
Well, I think I've just got a newborn baby here who arrived last week.
That would be a big problem.
So I think that could be a big problem indeed, which wouldn't be ideal. But it's quite amazing, this story, really. It is sort of the kind of thing that you'd read about in a science fiction novel or see in the movies. But I think that there's a bigger problem here for Boeing in particular, who haven't had a great 12 months or so in terms of their own public relations. And for their aircraft to malfunction or their spacecraft to malfunction, and then for those astronauts to potentially be retrieved via a SpaceX, look good for Boeing that their competitors are having to step in and rescue what's gone wrong. So I think that this is going to be a real problem for Boeing, and they aren't going to be happy about what's happened. But obviously, first and foremost, they're going to be thinking about the crew and making sure that they get home safe in any way possible.
Yeah, absolutely right. Kurt, sort of your thoughts on this story as sort of what strikes you as particularly interesting, worrying? Is it the PR aspect? Is it the sort of Boeing PR aspect, or the thought of just, the psychological impact of spending a lot more time up there than when perhaps you thought you weren't going to have to?
Yeah, it's a reminder that, NASA and space exploration is as much a military mindset operation that just as being deployed to combat, if you will, takes a psychological toll, and you could end up being deployed longer than you thought you would, or being called back, into a combat situation. Well, here we have people who are literally, they're stranded in space. And while we are thankful they're not in a military situation per se, the psychological toll that can take, and at least the preparation that you have to undergo to even get the sign off to be a part of a mission like this. Like, there's a reason why it mirrors that type of training that we see oftentimes with the military. And there are certainly going to be questions once we get these guys home that Boeing's going to have to answer. I mean, it is likely that they're going to be called before Congress at some point to answer questions for the House Armed Services Committee or the Science and Tech Committee that has jurisdiction over NASA. What are we doing here, and why do you keep having these issues, and why should we keep giving you government contracts if we have to go and use another private company to clean up your mess?
Final question, I think, to Leroy, because none of the rest of us have been on the ISS and experienced what it's like to spend an extended amount of time there. What is it like? What do you do? And Leroy, would you go back?
You know what? I mean, I've spent a total of almost 230 days in low Earth orbit in space, most of it aboard the space station. And so I've kind of, it's kind of like eating a big meal. I'm not really hungry yet, even though it's been a long time. And so I would hesitate to take the risk again to go to low Earth orbit. But if I were to be offered a trip to the moon or even to Mars, I would jump at those opportunities, to do something different where the risk reward would make sense.
Leroy, it's been really good to talk to you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to hear your thoughts.